There are there are 4 in Wisconsin as well as some surrounding states. So I don't know where everybody is in from, but I'm just going to go over some main differences of different vans that are available, what may fit one user that doesn't fit another user. So there's 2 main types of wheelchair accessible vehicles. There's a rear entry and a side entry. Side entries are typically more popular. The main reason is if the person in the wheelchair wants to be able to sit up front in the van, most side entries have removable front seats, where then the person in the wheelchair can sit up front, whether they're driving. You can drive from a side entry with hand controls, or you can sit up front as a front passenger. A rear entry van, you can only go as far as the second row in the wheelchair, and that is the securement position, either second row or third row. So there are a little bit more limitations to a rear entry, but the rear entry van, it typically always has a wider ramp. So people that are in a wider chair, like some manual chairs are much wider than some power chairs, and some of those will only fit in a rear entry because the average opening width of a side entry is 30 inches. So if a wheelchair ends up being wider than 30 inches, typically you have to go in a rear entry. The other thing we usually check is how high you are in a wheelchair. So that may depend. So if you sit pretty high in a wheelchair, like let's say you're 57, 58 inches from the ground to the top of your head, then that also limits you on what may work for you as far as a wheelchair accessible vehicle, because different vans, different types of conversions have different heights of entrance height. So not every van works for every person. There also is a partial cut on a side entry and a full cut. So partial cut means only the middle section is cut out, so the person in the wheelchair can still only sit in the second row. A full cut means it has removable front seats. And actually, I was just going to take you out and just start showing you some examples of some different vans. I brought a couple inside since it is cold here. It is snowing in Green Bay also, but we don't really have any on the ground. At least we're lucky we didn't really accumulate anything. But so the first one I was going to show you, we have it's a brand new 2022 Toyota Sienna. So I don't know if you're able to see much of it, but let me know if you're having trouble seeing anything. This one is a side entry. It is an in-floor ramp, so the ramp actually folds out. That's the other thing. There's either a fold-out ramp or an in-floor ramp. There's advantages to both. The in-floor ramp slides up underneath the floor. It doesn't take up any of your interior space, so it does give you a little bit more interior space. And it has a backup system for getting the ramp out if it ever fails. The one advantage to the fold-up, you can just push the ramp out instead of having a backup system. So there's advantages to both. This also, you can open up the side door without putting the ramp out, where a fold-up ramp, you have to put the ramp out. So this is an example of a full cut. So if you can look in here, I don't know if it might be too dark. Let me know if you can't see anything. This has it has two removable front seats. So this seat, actually, I'm just gonna put it down over here and see if you can see it. So like this seat, the cords disconnect from the wall. Go in here, the seat, there's a strap on the back of the seat. The seat lifts up and the whole seat will roll out of the van. I don't know if you can see that.
Good.
So, and then once the seat is out, there is wheelchair securements up in the front part of the van where you can secure a wheelchair. And actually both sides come out in this particular one. And then I've got a couple other ones. The one thing I don't have here, we actually do not have a rear entry van in stock, so I can't show you that right now. I do apologize. So then I also have this 2019 Dodge Caravan. And this one is a partial cut. So I'll show you a second. So this example has a fold-up ramp. So the ramp, it's a power fold-up. The ramp folds out. And this whole second row area is open for a wheelchair, but this is solid underneath the seats. So the seats are not removable in this one. The one advantage to this is cost. Usually the cost of the conversion is less because it takes less money to convert this, because they don't have to cut out the whole floor and put in removable seats. And then this is on a remote where you can just put the ramp back in. So this is an example of a fold-up ramp. And then the door works by power. And then I do have another one here. It is, this is one example. This is one of the only few non-van conversions on the market right now. It's a Chevy Traverse conversion, which Braun Ability makes right now. So if you don't want a van, this is one of the only non-vans. So it's set up just like a van. It does have a sliding door that they put in. And this is a full cut conversion. So this one will have removable front seats. Now this is a power sliding door that was installed. It does have an in-floor ramp that slides out. This also has what's called a power kneel. So the whole vehicle on this side of the vehicle actually squats the suspension. So there's less of an angle to get in the van or the vehicle. And then when you close it, it actually comes back up when the ramp goes back in. So this one still has both removable front seats. So this can be set up as a driver or a passenger in the front. And this, all of these vans can be installed with different driving controls, hand controls. One of the other ones I was going to show you also I have in here, there's a couple different manual ramp versions, which also it makes it a little bit more cost effective because there's no power equipment on this. So this is an in-floor manual. This is a new Toyota Sienna with a manual in-floor. So with this one, you just grab it with your hand, you pull up on the handle, it slides in by hand, and then this just snaps in place. This one still has a removable front passenger seat in it. So you can still set it up for a front passenger in this, but it eliminates all the power equipment, electrical equipment. So the one good thing on this is the upkeep or the maintenance on this is next to nothing because there's no power equipment to really take care of. And it just pulls out, goes down to the ground, and then you can get in. The downside of this is you always have to have a person with you to be able to put the ramp in and out. So if somebody's planning on driving a van from a wheelchair, this does not work for them. There also is a manual fold-out option. And then the other thing on a rear entry is pretty much every rear entry is actually 99% of rear entries are all manual ramps also. That's just the only way they make a rear entry. If you want a power ramp, it's going to be a side entry. And then the next thing that people look at is securements for vans. So one of the most popular ones that people get are called retractables. I don't know if you can see that here. This is a retractable. So this fits in the door track or floor track. It actually just pulls out, secures onto a wheelchair, and it tightens itself up. I have another example in the show floor I can show you, which is probably a little better lighting. But this can slide, there's the floor tracks in here, and it can slide along those floor tracks. You get a set of 4 of them for each corner of the wheelchair, which go in the floor. Can you guys see that okay? I know it's a little dark in here. Actually, let me see if I can turn on some lights. Yeah. I'm gonna just close this door real quick. Yeah, it's not lighting up. I think it's just, I need to start, but I'll show you some of those retractable securements in our show floor just so you can see them in there. This particular one has a fold down seat in it too. So the whole seat folds down for other passengers if there's no wheelchair in this one, or if the wheelchair is up front. Some models like this one with a manual ramp, oh, there we got a little light coming in. I don't know if that helps you at all. But some of the different models, you can put additional fold down seats in them. Some you cannot, just depends on what model you're looking at. I'm going to go out, I'll just show you the retractables. We have a board out here with some different examples. So this board shows the retractables. So this is kind of how it is. It fits, it fits on a track, and there's different tracks in the front and the rear. But like these ones, they just pull out and then they automatically tighten themselves. And then to get them off the wheelchair, you just, this releases it and it releases off the wheelchair. But when it's hooked to the wheelchair, you can actually manually tighten it even more on the sides. The other main securement, it's called a docking device, which is right here. This particular one is made by Q-Straight. So this, part is the part that we install on the floor of the van, and it's drilled right into the floor. And then there's a bracket that is put on the bottom of a wheelchair. Now it does have to be either rigid or a power wheelchair for it to work. But this bolt then it hooks onto that bracket, and when you drive in the van, we get it to the right spot, so you get in the same spot every time. It goes in and locks in place. This is crash tested, as well as the retractables are all crash tested. This is the quickest and easiest, but it is a little more costly than just the retractables. But then there's a button we install on the dash where you just hit the button and it releases the wheelchair and you can just drive right out. We do have some other examples here of different hand controls that we install. There's all types of different type. If somebody decides they want to be able to drive with hand controls, there's push rock, push right angle, twist, different spinner knobs that we install. You know, the amount of equipment that we can install so somebody's able to drive or be a passenger, we can tailor the vans to most situations, whatever people want. I wish I had the rear entry to show you also. I just don't have any in stock right now. Does anybody have any questions about the current vans that we've gone over, or any equipment? Oh. How long did somebody write?
Are you familiar with electric hitch lifts for scooters?
What kind of lift for scooters?
An electric.
Are you familiar with electric hitch lifts for scooters?
Yes, I am. So we do install those also at any of our locations. The most popular company that makes those lifts is Bruno. There's Bruno and Harmar, and there's different types of lift. There's the hitch style lift, and it's power, you drive on it. There's a remote, it lifts it up. And then there's also, depending on the vehicle, there's also a hoist style lift that comes out from the back, picks it up, brings it inside. Or there's what's called a Joey lift that usually works in mainly vans and larger SUVs. But there's a platform that comes out of the back, goes down to the ground, you drive on it, it picks it up and brings it back in. So we do that also. We install those in any type of vehicle. Basically anything that has to do with driving and handicap accessibility, we do handle.
Do you have a Minnesota location?
We do. It's in Roseville, Minnesota. Are you located in the Twin Cities area? Yep. It's in Roseville, Minnesota, and they do all of that there also.
So Brent, there was a message in the chat, but I also want to just for you to know, I think most of the people from this group are either from Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, or Iowa.
Okay, and we have locations in Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. Currently, there is nothing in North Dakota, but we do have a location in South Dakota near Sioux Falls also, in South Dakota.
Christy, do you want to read the messages in the chat? Okay.
So Scott asked, how long does it take to convert a van for a rear ramp?
The conversion process takes about the same no matter what kind you get done. If you have your own van that you want to get converted, we can send it on. Now, there are age restrictions on how old a van can be. It can't be over a certain number of years old or certain miles, depending on what company it is. The new ones, obviously, they can do. It also does have to have a clean Carfax, can't have any major accidents or anything on it. But it takes about an average of 2 to 3 months to get any van converted, whether it's side entry or rear entry. The hard part is most people don't have 2 or 3 months where they could be without a vehicle. So most people, probably at least 90%, buy an already converted van because there is no cost savings unless you already own the van. But it doesn't cost less to send it out and get converted because the conversion cost is the same whether it's already converted or you send it out to get converted. It's just a matter. Some people like to buy their own vehicle, I guess, but we do have new and used vehicles available at every location. So there are even some used vans with new conversions on them. So if you want something like that too, those are usually available.
There was another one. Do all these mods have any effect on insurance or liability?
They do, I believe, require some additional insurance coverage because if you want the conversion to be covered also, if something happens, there are some additional coverages you have to get for your insurance to cover that conversion. So it's the van plus the conversion. So usually they want some kind of detail about what's involved in the conversion, what equipment has been installed on the vehicle.
And then someone had emailed me prior. They asked what maintenance needs to be done to the ramp and the docking plate.
The docking plate, there's usually nothing that needs to be done unless you're having a problem with it. It's electronic. There really isn't a whole lot to go wrong with it unless there's a connection problem. The van, typically you're supposed to have serviced every 6 months. Now, if it's a manual ramp, you probably don't need it every 6 months, but a power ramp, we usually always recommend every 6 months because if a power ramp isn't working, you can get stranded somewhere and you don't want to get stranded. There are backup systems and stuff, but you want your ramp to be working. So they usually say every 6 months you should get it serviced.
Right. Where is the Iowa location?
Iowa, we have a location in Des Moines. It's actually in Grimes, if somebody knows where that's at.
Yeah, when we send the follow-up email, I can send the website too. You can check the locations. Is the ramp or the rear ramp more popular than the side ramp, or is it?
It's about probably, we sell probably at least 90% side.
Side, okay.
Versus rear because they're much more flexible. You can put a wheelchair in the second row area or the front, or somebody can drive. So it opens up a lot more options, and especially if most adults would rather sit in the front, even if.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Conversation. So.
Would you mind repeating that? You muted yourself.
Oh, sorry. I had a call coming in for a second. I just had to stop it. And most people want the side entry with the removable front seats because especially most adults want to be able to sit in front. Like if they have a spouse that's driving, they want to be able to sit in front, be part of the conversation, be part of, they don't want to feel like they're not part of the conversation. So mostly we do side entry just because they have the ability to sit up front.
Pat asks, do you have an estimated range of new versus used costs?
It all depends on the vehicle and the conversion. Conversion cost, brand new conversion costs can start in the low 20s and they go up to the upper 30s for some of the fancier conversion side entries. So that conversion cost, and then the van, it just depends on what. So the van portion on a new one, it's just whatever the van portion is. So like, if it's like a Honda Odyssey, they go from LX, which is their base model, up to the Elite. So that can range, $15,000 to $20,000 in price, because it's just the van price. So it's whatever the van costs is what it costs. And then the conversion, it just depends on what conversion it is. So they can range, like I said, in cost from around 20 up to the mid to upper 30s.
And
Now, there
what-
are some, depending on what state you live too, there are some state agencies which will help with the conversion cost too, if you do belong. So like Wisconsin, we have different programs like IRIS and CLUSA. So if people are in those programs, they will help and sometimes pay for the whole conversion, and then you only have to pay for a van. So there are, depending on what state, there are state agencies that will help with the cost of a modified vehicle.
Great, thank you.
So Brent, when it comes to the actual accessibility of the ramps, let's say when you're out and about, whether you go to a grocery store or a restaurant, I've heard some people say that the accessible parking spots aren't always the most accessible if it's a side ramp. Could you speak to that?
Most stores do have, so in the handicap spot, they have a spot and then they have a lined off
Mhm.
section which nobody's supposed to park. That's meant for a ramp, for a side entry. Now, some people will park in that spot or park over the line, and then if you're by yourself, you're kind of stuck waiting for that person to come out. Yeah, where a rear entry, it's out of the rear and you can get in no matter what. But if you have somebody with you anyway, because a rear entry, somebody else would have to be driving. So in a side entry anyway, they could pull out of the spot and then get you in. So it is that mainly it deals with people who are driving. If people are driving from a wheelchair, they can get stuck where they can't get in the van because somebody parked them in. There's actually a new feature on one of the VMI. VMI is one of the conversion companies. There's a button you push when you get out of the van, and it activates some sensors on the sides. If somebody parks too close to your van, the van will talk to them and tell them to move their vehicle that they parked too close.
That's awesome. Oh, and just, Brent, you muted yourself again. No.
So yeah, that's what call comes in. Sorry.
He's a busy
No, it's
guy.
okay. That's
Um,
great.
Scott asked if you can lease a van while yours is being converted.
We have rental vans available. So that's what some people do, is they rent a van while it's getting converted.
Good idea. If you bought a used van from an individual, where would you take it for inspection? That's a good question.
So that's one thing if you're buying a used van, always take it in to get looked at, because you never know. Wheelchair accessible vehicles tend to start rusting underneath because there's a lot more added metal. So that's one thing, depending on the year, I would always get it looked at before you purchase it, because if it's not structurally sound underneath, you could have spent a lot of money and it ends up really not being worth a whole lot. And you don't know that unless you can get it up in the air. So I would definitely take a look at it, but take it to, any mobility works, or most mobility works, or most mobility dealers would look at it for you. We'd take a little bit of time and just put it up in the air and look at it. I know in Green Bay, we a lot of times won't really even charge for that. If we do charge, it's just minimal time. It usually takes us no more than 15 minutes to really check it out up on our lift.
Great.
Because we don't want you buying a van that's going to cost you, because they can get, those older vans, sometimes the upkeep on them can get fairly expensive fairly quick. And if you bought something and you didn't know what was wrong with it, it can get pretty expensive. So I would definitely recommend getting it checked out if you're buying a used van before you buy it.
Anyone else? If you are buying private, what did you said something about the height. You should always check the height.
Always check, because door opening heights for wheelchairs are different depending on the van, depending on the conversion company. So they can range from 51 to 52 inch opening all the way up to a 58 inch opening. So just make sure you know how tall you sit in your chair and if you're going to be able to fit, because you'd hate to buy a van and then you go to get in it and you hit your head or you got to duck every time we get in. So it just depends. It depends on the what van it is. Like I have a diagram that tells me what every van is, but if you've never been in a van, you know, you don't always know until you try it. So always try it before you buy it too, just to make sure you fit, because different wheelchairs have trouble fitting in the side entry. And you want to make sure you can fit in width wise and height wise.
Carrie, Go ahead.
Every person is a little taller in their chair. Some people are taller in their torso, so they sit in the chair. They can be taller than somebody else in a chair, and it depends on the chair too. Some chairs sit taller than others.
Right. Angie, we wouldn't have that problem.
No, we're short people over here. And Brent, along those lines, for people who might be just thinking in the future, so especially the difference between a manual wheelchair and a power chair, huge height difference. So definitely if you're in a manual wheelchair now, but you're looking, you know, proactively for the future, make sure to keep that in mind, that if you would ever need a power wheelchair, that it would be quite a bit higher. And
It is higher, but
Yeah.
the one nice thing about it is it is narrower too. So for
Oh.
indoors
Oh.
and going through doorways, power wheelchairs are narrower, so they do fit through doors width-wise a lot easier, because on a power wheelchair the wheels underneath. On a manual one, they're on the outsides. The wheels take up extra space on the manual one. So yes, you do sit higher in a power, but they are narrower, so they do fit in vans usually a little better.
Good point.
How often would be the recommended maintenance with the lift portions and the ramps part of the van?
Oh, that was every 6 months. So usually every 6 months on a power one. On a manual one, you can probably go longer than 6 months because there really isn't a whole lot to go wrong. You do need to lubricate them and just make sure everything's working fine, but there's not as much upkeep on a manual ramp versus a power one.
Can you take a adaptive vehicle in a regular car wash that would like shoot water up underneath?
Yep.
Is that?
Yeah, you can. I take them through the car wash all the time, so
Okay.
it's no problem.
Okay.
Yep, they're sealed on the bottom just like another one. They're not
Okay.
gonna leak anything.
How wide are power wheelchairs?
Most power wheelchairs are anywhere from 24 to 26 inches. That's what most of them are.
Okay, that's good. All our indoor doors are only 30 inches.
Yeah, and a lot of manual chairs are 30 and some can be 30 plus. So manual wheelchairs, depending on the company, can be anywhere from 26 all the way up to 34 inches. So.
Okay.
Any
Yeah,
other
that's
questions?
Yeah, that's the one advantage to a power wheelchair is it can pretty much fit in any doorway interior wise. It also turns, most of them turn on a 360 where it just rotates too. So if you're indoors, you would need to turn really sharp. They rotate pretty easily. And we actually, Mobility Works, we don't specialize in wheelchairs, but we do sell wheelchairs also and scooters. Scooters, we actually have quite a bit of inventory. We usually always have 4, 5, 6 scooters here, and then wheelchairs we have usually one in stock, but we can order both Pride and Golden wheelchairs also. So but we're not as specialized in wheelchairs. So if you're looking for more of a specialty thing or something like that, then you would probably have to go to a wheelchair store. But we do have, especially scooters, we usually carry a good selection of scooters, because you can use a scooter to get in a van. You just can't ride on the scooter in the van. You can ride on a wheelchair in the van,